All right, so the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children is well underway. This as violence against women and girls remains one of the most prevalent and pervasive human rights violations in the world. Director of the Teddy Bear Foundation, Dr. Shaheda Omar, joins us live via video link. For more, Dr. Omar, thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Thank you to you and all the viewers. I think it's a very sad time of the year that we are reminded that we speak to 16 days of activism, and this has been in operation since 1991. And if we look at the challenges, the achievements, there have been achievements, there have been some progress and some success stories. But if we look overall at the incidence and prevalence of violence against women and children, that continues to be so high, pervasive and prevalent, as you described so eloquently. And we are finding that as we speak, women and girls continue to be marginalized, continue to be frowned upon, continue to be subjected to secondary victimization. If we look at law enforcement, who are often the first responders on the scene, often where reports are being made to SABC officials, they're always not in a position to respond appropriately or adequately, simply due to the fact that we do not have dedicated staff, skilled staff. There's a high turnover of staff. Staff are on stress leave because of the overwhelming caseloads that are often placed upon them. So the demands are quite excessive, and often they don't have the knowledge to respond in the manner they should, in terms of being timeous and appropriate and adequate. And often both women and children are subjected to further trauma, sometimes by the lack of appropriate responses, but also by the lack of the response to prevent further victimization by the alleged perpetrators or the perpetrators that they are living with. If we look at the functionality of the courts, we are also challenged in terms of the backlogs. We look at COVID, where there were so many DNA backlogs, but also now with load shedding, where often cameras or CCTV surveillance is not working, equipment's not working, intermediaries not available, interpreters not available. So as we speak, we are still faced with numerous challenges that continue to fail our women and children. It's the systems that are failing them.
Dr. Shaheda, thank you for those opening remarks, because you're speaking about the issue of response. And given the underreporting of violence against women, some of the view that we're applying a band-aid treatment approach. I wonder if you could weigh in on that. Some saying that we need to be looking at the root causes, the systemic issues, the economic inequality, and how these systems have perpetuated, the cycle of violence and dominance. How would you respond to that as well?
Indeed, I think if we look at how we actually need to start bringing in our boys, our men into the dialogues. They need to champion this scourge of violence. There needs to be a sense of ownership. We need to start instilling, values where we look at the gendered norms and values, the stereotypes, the patriarchal attitudes that have been deeply entrenched. We look at the toxic masculinity. So I mentioned boys and men by engaging in dialogues, but we also need to bring the women into our dialogues, because if we look at the stereotypes where women are actually the primary caregivers, the caretakers, the primary nurturers, and actually subscribe to the preferential norms and stereotypes where there's specific roles that are prescribed to girls and specific to boys, the assigning of roles. And I think those are things that we need to also work on. But working on different levels, you are absolutely correct that these are systemic issues, and we need, there are flaws on different levels, and we need to address it, starting from, the first 1,000 days with children, addressing awareness raising, conscientizing, continuing this throughout the school structures, but even in the workplace, across the sectors, where within the antenatal healthcare facilities, within the workplace settings, where there's awareness raising, conscientizing, where people are more aware of their rights, responsibilities, and where to access support, where to access protection orders or to get any kind of medical attention, places of safety. I think these are practical things that often looking at people in the community, they're unaware of. They're also not aware that they have rights, that they can actually implement these rights and get the necessary support they so rightfully deserve.
Well, perhaps how do we begin to move from awareness to accountability? And when we look at the general public policies, are there anything missing? Is there anything missing that you think we need to still be implementing at this point, given the scourge and the war that we're waging against GBVF, how we're faring as we speak?
So, I'm just thinking of numerous things, and I want to just refer to the central theme for this year, where we talk about acceleration. But I think the sub-theme is also a basic right to drinking water, where we find, if you look at the Eastern Cape, and we don't have to go so far, even in some of the areas within the borders of Gauteng, where women and girls are actually walking kilometers to have access to drinking water, and they are victimized and they are at huge risk at this point. So that is something in terms of infrastructure and basic rights, the constitutional rights, which are not validated, which are actually violated. So I think, we need to start going back to basics and looking at that before we can actually even proceed beyond that.
Thank you for your time with us on the SABC and for weighing in at this hour. Dr. Shaheda Omar, she is the director of the Teddy Bear Foundation, just weighing in as we observe 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. We're looking at the strides that have been taking, the gaps that still pervade, and really where to from here as a country. Again, thank you to her for weighing in.